Hey, hello, my friend. I pray that this finds you well from wherever and whenever it is that you are tuning in. And welcome to our fourth installment of Evans Kamuru Live, where we go deeper into all things spirituality, self development, and self achievement. If you're new to this channel or to me, welcome. My name is Evans Kamuru. I am a speaker, an author, and a coach, and I help people and organizations lead with disability. So, what does that mean? I was born with a physical handicap without my right hand and also without my right foot. But by the grace of God, I've been able not only to embrace, but also transcend the limitations of my handicap to lead not just my life, but to lead my family and to lead others. And the truth of the matter is that we all have a handicap or two or three. In other words, a challenge or an obstacle that keeps us from fully fulfilling the mandate and the purpose that God has over our lives. And so I help people and organizations to also transcend and embrace their limitations, if you will, so that they too can lead with disability. So we've been talking about several things, and the topics are building upon each other. In our very first installment of Evans Kamuru Live, we talked about the power of beginnings. Then, in the second installment, we talked about our greatest superpower, and I made the case that your greatest superpower and my greatest superpower is awareness. And then in the third installment, which was last week, I started by talking about the first thing that I believe is the most important for you and me to grow in awareness about. Growing in awareness of God. A.W. Tozer, who is a Christian theologian, said this: what comes to mind when we think about God is the most important thing about us. What comes to mind when we think about God is the most important thing about us. As God is exalted to the proper place in our lives, 1,000 problems are solved at once. Now, whether you believe in God or you believe in the power of the universe, and I'm not trying to impose my beliefs, I'm basically hoping that hopefully you can entertain the idea that there is something or someone that is bigger than you and me, that caused all this to be, that sustains it. I mean, why doesn't the earth blow into or disintegrate into smithereens? What keeps the sun in its place? What keeps the sun at the exact distance that it needs to be from the earth so that it's not too close that we burn up or too far that we freeze? There is something or someone. There is a higher power that started it all, that sustains it all, and that is directing it all. We can agree that there's a rhyme and a rhythm to life. That's why there are 24 hours every day. And that's been the case from the beginning of time to the end of time. Everything is progressing towards a goal. And so the case I was making is that when you and I become aware of that higher being, which I believe to be God, coming from a Christian persuasion, then that gives us and sets the context for everything else in our lives. So the stream last week, for some reason, on Facebook quit. But by the way, we are also streaming on YouTube Live. My channel on YouTube is Evans Kamuru Official. I also have an Instagram channel, and we are streaming there live as well. By the way, please follow me on these platforms. It's a blessing to me, and it tells the powers that be, the algorithms, that Evans is communicating and is giving value. And it allows the algorithms to allow my content to be seen by more eyes. So if you would just subscribe and follow me on each of these platforms. But anyway, I said all that because the stream on the Facebook side got cut off at the maybe 11th or 12th minute mark last week. I don't know why, but the stream on YouTube continued. So if you'd like to get the full version of last week's installment, you can go to Evans Kamuru Official and check the live stream from last week, Wednesday. You'll see the whole thing. But let me just give you a recap anyway. Number one, to bring you up to speed, but then number two, to also show you that all these principles are building upon each other. So when we talked about growing in awareness of God, we talked about the qualities of God, the qualities that make God God and everyone and everything else not. Like he's all powerful, he's all knowing, he's all present, he's self-existent, he is eternal, and he is infallible, right? But it's one thing to know about God. There are a lot of people with theology degrees and have been to seminary and can run circles around anyone in terms of knowledge, theological knowledge about God. But it's a whole other thing to know God. You can know about God but not know God. And so I went on to share that you and I were created to know God. We were created for the presence of God. So access to God is not limited to quote unquote spiritual leaders, and it's not limited to those who are educated. It's not limited to those who are holy and are crossing all T's and dotting all the I's. You, child of God, were created for the presence of God, and God wants you to know him. And I made a case that we can experience God not just in the prayer closet, not just in church, not just when we're reading the word, but God has created us as tripartite beings, mind and spirit. And he has given us senses, physical senses, with which we can see him in the physical world. Like when you look at a sunset, a beautiful sunset, that's God saying, hello, I exist. You can connect with God through your physical environment, through the gift of the physical senses that you have been given. Every time you eat a wonderful steak and you want to slap your mama, that's God goodness being expressed through your physical interaction with food and through your physical sense of taste, if that makes sense. But then you can be aware of God's goodness and God's greatness and God's godness, not just in the physical realm, but also in the psychological realm. And God has given each one of us, free and clear, straight from the factory, 6 amazing mental faculties. I like to call them psychological sensibilities, right? We have physical senses to connect with the physical world, but we also have psychological sensibilities to connect with the psychological world. What are those gifts? Imagination. Intuition, what we know today. We are building on it, right? Intuition. 3 is 4 is will, 5 is reason, and 6 is memory. Now, I delved into those concepts in the last presentation, so please go ahead and watch it. Also, I talk about them in my book, Created for Love, in the section that talks about the wonder of your mind. So grab yourself a copy if you haven't done that. You can get deeper into those ideas. But not just that, we can connect with God, not just in the physical world through our physical senses, and not just in our psychological world through our psychological sensibilities, the mental faculties of our mind, but we are also spirit beings. Actually, at the core, when you peel all these away, we are a spirit being with a mind living in a physical body. So the core of you, like the real Evans, you know those shows that say, may the real Evans stand up. Well, the real Evans cannot quite stand up because I am a spirit being. Like if I was to be involved in an accident and got disfigured, I'd still be Evans. So Evans is not this tent, and Evans is not my mind. Evans is the breath of God. Remember when God created us from a Christian biblical perspective, he breathed or he breathed. Which one is it? he breathed his breath into man, and scripture says that man became a living being. So that thing in you that we cannot quite touch or put a finger to is spirit. And that part of you is perfect and is connected and one with God right now. So you can not only connect and become aware of God through your physical environment, but also through your psychological environment, through your spirit, your psychological sensibilities, and at the spirit level, you can connect with God. I made a final point last week that God is found in the present. You and I we tend to want to find God everywhere else, right? In the big things. There's a story in the Bible of Elijah when God was revealing himself to Elijah. And the story goes that a huge fire came, but God was not in the fire. A huge earthquake came, but God was not in the earthquake. Then there was a still small voice. And it turns out that God was in the still small voice. And so I was suggesting that more often than not, we look for God in the big things and in the big places, like when I am praying or when I am in church. But God is found in the present, in every here and now. If God is omnipresent, meaning he's everywhere all the time, he's right where you are as you listen to me right here, right now. What changes is our awareness of his presence. And so if you and I can learn to look for good, because the way God expresses himself to us in every moment is through his goodness, through his might or his greatness, and through his divinity. And so you can look around in your physical world, like I said, and see the good in your physical world now. You can, using your mental faculties, imagine good things through your imagination. Hear his voice through intuition, which we're going to get into here in a little bit. In your here and now, you can connect with God right where you are. All right. Well, that was a long intro, but thank you for allowing me to do that so that you can see how these things build upon each other, and also just in case you missed the last installment. So today, we're talking about intuition. Intuition. Growing in awareness of the voice of God, or of the voice of the world, of the universe, if you will. That's what you ascribe and subscribe to. Growing in awareness of the divine. So why did I decide to talk about this? Because I was actually today I was supposed to talk about growing in awareness of yourself, in self-awareness, in awareness of your identity, in self-concept. That was the next logical step. After we grow aware of God, the next step is to grow in awareness of who we really, really are as children of God, are as beings created in the image of that incredible God, right? And that's why I started with awareness of God, because it drives everything else. When you really, really understand God, then you can understand yourself, because you're created in his image. Like when people see my kids, they can know a little bit about me, even without meeting me, from looking at my kids, because my kids resemble me. Now, if they were to dig further and get my kids' blood and DNA, my kids would have my DNA, because they're my kids. You are God's kid. And when you really start having a true and healthy perspective of who God is, it informs who you are. So that was what I was going to talk about today. But I felt led. I picked it up in my intuition that we should talk today about intuition. And I had a choice in that moment to say this was the plan, or to follow the leading that I felt, the hunch that I felt in my heart. The intuition that led me to talk about intuition today. So I chose to follow that leading and to be obedient. So that's the first reason why we are talking about intuition as opposed to talking about self-awareness. Number two, intuition is so important. And listen, I am not a master at it. I am not a subject matter expert. I am growing in being aware of and developing and tapping into my own intuition. But in my journey, I'm finding that it's so incredible and so important to our lives that it's not something that we can ignore. And so today I'm not coming as a guru, I'm coming as a fellow sojourner, as somebody who's also on a journey of growing to share what it is that I found out so far. And my hope is to resensitize you to this amazing gift that's already in you and hopefully spark an interest that will cause you to want to learn more and to dig deeper and to really continue. If you've started or if you've not started, start on your journey of tapping more into your intuition. So when you talk about intuition, people think about it as being woo-woo, right? When you talk about, I felt something in my heart, or I was led. Now, in Christianese, we talk about God told me. And I was inspired by the Spirit. Now, it gets into the realm of woo-woo, because how do you quantify that? How do you scientifically explain you felt something or God told you something? Yet, intuition is a reality that we cannot deny. And so allow me to maybe go there with you, to be a little woo-woo, but fear not, I'm also going to give you some very, very practical applications, practical ways to understand intuition, number one, and practical things you can do to grow that amazing mental faculty that you already have. And so today, in the balance of our time, we're going to talk about what is intuition, why it's important, and how to grow your intuition. Now, if you're there, please say, God help Evans, because I have quite a bit to cover and I'm hoping that we can get through it all. So, what is intuition? Different people call it different things. As I started to explain earlier, sometimes you'll hear somebody say it's a leading, right? A leading in the spirit where you felt led to do something. I've heard people call intuition a sixth sense. That gut feeling, that hunch that sometimes you get, that inner knowing that transcends logic. Like, have you ever just been going about your day and then you felt in your heart that maybe you should call somebody, your mom, your dad, your brother, a friend? You pick up the phone and on one of those times you decide to obey the leading, you call them and they literally tell you, I was thinking about you and I was just about to call you. How do you explain that? How do you scientifically explain that? Well, I guess in scientific terms, when you get into quantum physics and you start talking about energy and vibrations, I guess that's how science makes sense of that fact. Or when you feel led to call somebody and you call somebody, and when you call them, you realize they needed something, they were in distress, and you were just the person that they needed, maybe to pray for them or to encourage them. Has this ever happened to you where maybe you got a hunch or a feeling, maybe not to take a particular highway, and you choose to obey, and later on you find out that along that highway there was maybe a wreck that either you could have been involved in or that could have slowed you down? How do you explain that? Let me tell you something that happened yesterday. Proof positive that intuition is not magic and it's not something that's woo out there. So yesterday, I'm in one of the nursing homes that I go to perform, to share music, if you will. And we are done. I'm done with the session for that day, and I'm like, hey guys, that's it for now. And then a friend of mine says, hey, what about that other song? I'm like, what other song? He's like, that other song. That was his way of just saying, hey, give us one more. And at that time, I had the choice to decide, we are done, it's time. In any case, I need to be going on to my next stop. But I decided, let me do one song. Now, it turns out that before that time, I had done 2 Kenny Rogers songs. The first one, if you're a Kenny Rogers fan or if you are familiar with some of his music, was Coward of the County. Everyone considered him the coward of the county. And then the last song that I'd done to close the session was Lady, I'm your knight in shining armor and I love you. And so when he asked for one more, I was like, okay, here's another cool song by Kenny Rogers. Now, there's a lady who works at that facility and her name is Lucille. Okay, you can already see where this is going. And Lucille is out on medical leave because she had a procedure, that she was having done. And so I thought to myself, because she doesn't like that Kenny Rogers song, Lucille. So I made a joke and I said, well, now that Lucille is out, we're going to do Lucille. And everybody got a laugh out of that. And we all sang together Lucille. You picked a fine time to leave me, Lucille. 4 hungry children and a crop in the field. And we had a great time. So we are done. I pack up my things. I go to the restroom to use the restroom before heading out. And in my mind, I got again a leading, an intuition, a feeling to pray for Lucille because before she had left for her medical leave, I'd promised her I would pray for her. So right there in the bathroom, I'm washing my hands and I pray for Lucille and I say, God, help her heal. And just say a quick, sweet, short prayer. I'm done. I'm walking out the door. Guess who walks in? Who's walking into the door on the driveway? Lucille. Coincidence? I don't know. I think that's intuition right there. And I literally told her, Lucille, we were literally talking about you. How do you make sense of that? I could give you many other stories that happened just yesterday where I got a feeling, I got a hunch, and I responded to the hunch. And then I later proved it to be true. It was divine guidance. It was the voice of the divine guiding me all along. So that's kind of what intuition is. Why is intuition important? Intuition gives you access to the mind that knows it all. A good analogy that I heard was by Mary Morrissey and Bob Proctor. They do have a course called Mind Magic or Magic of the Mind, where they go into these mental faculties, imagination, intuition, perception, will, reason, and memory. Actually, that's where my awareness of those faculties was really, really developed, is by listening to their teachings on that. And Mary Morrissey says, think of your laptop or think of the device that you're watching me on. Maybe it's your laptop, maybe it's your phone. Your phone contains only so much information locally on its hard drive. That is the case with your computer. It has a finite amount of data. However, your phone or your laptop connected to the internet has access to an infinite amount of information and knowledge and data. So what's on the phone's hard drive is limited, it's finite. But the moment you connect that phone to the web, and now with AI, you have everything that is available on the web right at your fingertips. That's the same thing. In your own knowledge, in your own intelligence, in your own awareness, you would not know to call your friend because they need to hear from you or because they need you to pray for them. In my own intelligence, I would not have known that Lucille was coming yesterday or even gotten the hunch to think of her. But when you connect to the mind of God, allow me to say, the mind of the divine that knows everything about everything, you're like that phone that's connected to the internet that all of a sudden you transcend the limitations of what you know, and you get access to the mind that knows it all. God is omniscient. He knows everything. God never learns. God never has an aha moment. God never has a light bulb moment. He knows the end from the beginning. He knows everything about everything and about everyone for all time, right now, in every present moment. God knows every detail of your life. God knows every solution to any problem you have ever had, you're currently having, and you ever will have. If that's the case, would you agree that it would do you and me good to learn, not just to go from our own understanding? Proverbs says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. What if you could tap to the mind that knows more than your mind? You'd have an unfair advantage in your own life, right? Inventors like Thomas Edison and many other inventors, the Wright brothers, they used the gift of intuition to get the ideas that they did. Like, you see, when it comes to inventing things, there's two kinds of invention. One is an invention that takes something that's already invented or things that are already invented and puts them together to come up with a new invention. But then there is a creative type of invention where you come up with something that has never been thunk, with something that has never been done. Like when Edison created the light bulb, that was something that had never been done. When the Wright brothers invented the plane, that was something that had never been done. In other words, they didn't have a point of reference in the known world. There's no book that they could have gone to. There's no person alive at the time. There was no knowledge bank in the world that could have revealed that to them. And actually, there's record of Edison, basically things that he used to do to tap into that intuitive ability, to tap into what in the world of self-development or we call creative imagination, because there's synthetic imagination, which is exactly what I talked about a moment ago, where you take something that already exists, ideas, and you observe and you see how they can be put together to come up with something new, versus coming up with something that is completely new. The only way we come up with things that have never been, like when the internet began, or when computers began, or when electric cars began, or you name it, it's by tapping in to the mind that knows it all. Now, please realize that there's nothing new under the sun. The wisest man to ever live, King Solomon, said exactly that. There is nothing new under the sun. And what I mean by that is that the information or the wisdom or the knowledge or the science to invent a plane was already present in Genesis chapter 1 when God created everything. The scientific laws that allowed for the plane to be invented were already present. They just were not yet discovered. The raw materials needed to invent a plane were already present in Genesis chapter 1 or Genesis 2 when God finished creating everything. The raw materials, the concepts, the principles, the wisdom to create a tablet, to create a keyboard, the raw materials, the iron, the way to make plastics, all that information was already present in Genesis 1. There's nothing new under the sun in that sense. But it takes God or the divine revealing to you and me, human beings created in his image and who are creative like him, and he gives us the wisdom and he allows us awareness to discover things about our environment so that we can invent and create new things. My friend, I think all I'm trying to say is that intuition is so important because it helps you transcend your mind and you can tap into the mind of the divine, the mind that knows it all, the mind that can lead you to the destiny that he has for you, the mind that can reveal to you your purpose, the mind that can reveal to you the next step, the mind that can solve whatever problems you're facing, the mind that can help you bring to the world that which you are meant to bring to the world. I want to make a bold claim here and say that the likes of Edison and Thomas Ford and the Wright brothers and the Elon Musks and the Jeff Bezos and the Bill Gateses and the Steve Jobs of the world, each one of us has capacity to become one of those people. Each one of us has within us a contribution to make to the world that will revolutionize the world one way or the other. That's not relegated to special people. We are all created in the image of God. Elon Musk is not created in a better image of God than you. In you is the same mind, is the same presence, is the same power, is the same purpose. And I want to suggest to you that the people who do great things are not special. The people we call geniuses and we call talented are not special. They have just learned to become aware of the power of the divine in them, of their divine nature, of their infinite potential, and they have discovered consciously or unconsciously how to develop and bring it out. You too, my friend, you have something very, very valuable to share with the world that only you can. And the way you can tap into that deposit of treasure that is inside you is by developing your mental faculty that you already have of intuition, of accessing a mind that is greater than yours, the mind of the divine. Okay. I hope that makes sense so far. So we've talked about what intuition is, why it's important, and now I want to spend the balance of our time talking about how to develop intuition. I want to start by reminding you that intuition is not a gift that is allocated to a select few. Every child of God created in the image of God came with intuition right from our mother's womb, right straight from the factory. The same way every child is born, except, in the case of handicaps and so on, every child is born with 5 physical senses, by and large. Every child is born with the 6 mental faculties that I've been talking about, and of which one of them is intuition. You came with that straight out of the gate. This is like an Oprah show. You know those shows where Oprah used to say, you get one, you get one, you get one. Everybody gets one. However, just like our physical senses, we are all born with them, but we need to develop them. A child is not born seeing. They have, even though they have the capacity and the wiring and the DNA to see, they have to learn to see. That's why we rejoice when a child first, because think about it, a child has never seen all its life before then. And so we get excited when that newborn opens their eyes. And you know what? They tell me that a newborn doesn't see in color, not immediately. They see in black and white. They have to learn to see in color and distinguish color. Then they have to learn to see faces and to see things and distinguish what those things are. Like they have to learn, oh, this is the face of mama and this is the face of dada. And that's why when a child is held by a stranger, they cry. Right? Even when they're sleeping, sometimes a child, when they're held by a stranger, will resist it or cry. Because the child has intuition, they have a knowing in them. They can't quite explain what it is, but they know this is not dada, this is not mama. But the point I'm trying to make here is that a child has to learn, has to develop all the physical senses they come with. They have to learn how to smell and to distinguish smell. They have to learn how to feel, touch, and decide, okay, this is hot. This sensation is called hot. This other sensation is called cold. This shape is called round. Physical senses have to be developed, even though we come with them from the factory. So is your intuition. So is your imagination. So is your gift of perception. So is your gift of will. So is your gift of reason. So is your gift of memory. It has to be developed. Are you with me so far? Point number one, you have one. You came with one. Point number two, just because you have one doesn't mean that it works by default, or rather, you can develop it so that you are more in tune with it, and just as importantly, learn how to use it in ways that serve you. So, like, we all have the gift of imagination, right? We can all imagine, but we use it in ways that hurt us. We imagine negative outcomes. So, like, if I have an audition, instead of imagining, using my gift of imagination to imagine myself blowing that audition out of the water, I start imagining how I'm going to fail. I start imagining how they're going to hear me sounding bad. It's the same gift being used against you. We also have intuition, but we don't get the maximum benefit of it because we don't develop it, we don't grow it. And even when we are using it, we're using it to pick up signals that are not serving us, if that even makes sense. All right. Now, when you develop your intuition, you gradually and continually become more and more aware of that voice. Like, if your mom or your brother or a close friend calls you, the moment you pick up the phone, even if you didn't look at the call ID and they say hello, you will know it's them. Why? Because you have developed a knowledge of their voice. By the way, did you know that each one of us has a unique voice? Now, that's a story for another day. Each one of us has a unique voice. Even if you mimic somebody else's voice, it's never quite 100% exact. You can learn through use, through development, an awareness, an attunement to the voice of the divine. Jesus, in one of the gospel, talking to his disciples, he says, my sheep know me, and I know my sheep, and they know me, and my sheep know my voice. That voice of the divine is something that you have to cultivate over time. Now, let me give you ways in which you can cultivate your intuition. Are you ready? Now, the other day, I looked up, by the way, there is a plethora of information. If you just go on YouTube and put in intuition or put in how to develop your intuition, you will be amazed at all the resources out there. If you go to Amazon books and you search on the subject, you will be amazed at what you find there. There is information out there on how to do this. And I'm hoping that today's session is simply something to resensitize you to this amazing gift and hopefully spark an interest in you to say, since I got one, right? I got one. And this ability is so incredible because it helps me access the mind of the divine, but it's something that I can grow. What more can I learn about it so that I can make even more use of the gift? So all that to say, I went to YouTube and I looked up how to grow your intuition. And I found this YouTube short by this guy called Lon Therian. I probably butchered that name. It's a short video, just 2 minutes and 13 seconds. But he does such a great job of giving 6 ways. Now, there are many ways, but he gives 6 ways in 2 minutes and 13 seconds. I'm actually going to post the link in my comments. Feel free to check it out. But I thought, rather than reinvent the wheel, let me adopt his 6 ways. But for more than 2 minutes and 13 seconds, I'm going to share with you those 6 ways and how I found those work for me. We'll put some more flesh on his ideas, all right? So, number 1, stillness. stillness. We live in a world where we think that the more activity and the more flurry of activity we can have, the more productivity we are attaining. And if it's not physical activities that keep us busy, it is mental activity. Man, our minds are always racing. And this technology, these phones and things that we have and social media are not helping either. We're in an attention economy where everything is trying to get your attention, your mental attention. Whether it's notifications of your emails that you need to respond to, or text messages that you need to respond to, or a missed call that you need to return, or a notification, ding, somebody has liked your post, and all of a sudden your attention is driven to go to Facebook to check who liked your post, who commented on your post, so that you can get that dopamine hit that we've been conditioned to, right? Our lives are full of activity. But I'm coming to find more and more that God is not going to be found in the earthquake. God's voice is not going to be found in the fire. It's found in a still small voice. And to hear that still small voice, you will have to be still. You will have, in the words of Psalms 46:10, to be still and know that He is God. In a world that is shouting and demanding our attention, it takes stillness, physical stillness, having times in your day when you can just say, stop, I'm not going to do anything, I'm just going to sit here. And then mental stillness, where you bring your focus, if you will, to the presence of God. If you will, you quiet your mind so that you can hear. I heard Bob Proctor give this analogy that when the surface of a lake is still, it reflects the heavens, the skies. Have you ever seen a water body that is completely still? It's like smooth glass. You can see the reflection. But the moment a pebble is thrown in there, the reflection of the heaven is gone. When you and I are able to be still, we can reflect and we can hear from heaven. Stillness. Practice stillness. Number two, something that helps with, I know you can say, okay, fine, I can find a way for 5 minutes to be still and do nothing. And even that's very, very hard. But you're saying, okay, maybe I can do that, but how do I still and quiet my mind? There are many techniques, but here is one. Breathing. In the world of yoga and Eastern religious practices, they are big on meditation, and they are big. And meditation, in its classic or maybe most traditional sense, is basically being still and quieting your mind by focusing on your breathing. In other words, you bring your attention from everything else that is clamoring for it. That thing that you have to do right after this live call, or that work project that is yet to be done, or, oh, I got to pass by the grocery. Oh, wow. My Instagram. Like you bring your attention, you quiet your mind and you take your attention from all of that distraction and you focus it on your breath. You take slow, deep, intentional breaths. Matter of fact, can we do that just right now? Just be still for a second and take the deepest breath you have taken so far today. Take that with me. Shall we? Here we go. And you pay attention to your breath. Pay attention to the air as it comes in. How does it feel? How does it smell? What's the temperature of it? Follow it as it goes in your nose and down your throat and into your tummy and fill up. And then just as intentionally and slowly breathe out. Breathe out. When you focus on your breathing, it's like lifting weights. So, like a football player lifts weights, not because they're going to lift weights on the football field, but because lifting weights gives them strength that they can translate into the game on the field. Meditation and breathing simply, and by using your breath as the medium, teaches you to focus. It teaches your mind to focus so that when you are out there, you can be able to use your focus muscles that you built in the breathing and meditation gym to the task at hand, to the person who you're having dinner with, and you need to give them your full attention. You can bring your mind to the presence of God. You can be aware of His goodness. You can be aware of His voice. Breathing is simply a mechanism to teach you how to focus. And by teaching you how to focus, you can then be able to focus and tune in to the voice of God, if that makes sense. There are many other kinds of meditations, such as walking meditation, where you pay attention to your walking, to the actual act of walking, or to whatever activity it is that you're doing. Again, it's just like lifting weights. It's training your mind to focus. What you focus on, whether it's breathing or walking, is not the point. The point is training your mind to focus. And that helps you to hear the voice of the divine, because it quietens you enough so that you can hear the voice of the divine. Breathing, by the way, has physiological benefits as well. You know, your body needs oxygen, your brain needs oxygen. And when we are first born as babies, our breathing is perfect. Did you know that? As a baby, you breathe perfectly. Again, to the point that we are already born with these abilities. As we grow up, we learn bad breathing habits, bad posture, bad breathing habits, and our breathing becomes shallow and fast as opposed to slow, deep, and intentional the way it was meant. Breathing in and out activates your sympathetic and parasympathetic systems, brain systems. The sympathetic one is, you activate your sympathetic system as you're breathing in. That builds tension. Your parasympathetic is activated as you breathe out. That's the release, and that's the ebb and flow of life. So, number one, stillness. When you are still, you can hear God's still small voice. When you quiet physical activity and you quiet mental activity, breathing teaches you how to focus so that you can hear His voice. This third one is one that was introduced to me recently by one of my coaches, and I'm on a journey of learning how to do it. Is scanning the energy of people and scanning the energy in a room. I know, now I'm getting into the woo-woo stuff. Like your gift of intuition can feel the energy. That's why sometimes when you meet somebody, you can, maybe if you feel uneasy and you're like, why am I feeling uneasy? Maybe it's because your energy or the energy that person is projecting, maybe they're a mean person. Maybe they are, you name it, and you're picking up on that energy through your intuition. The same thing is when you meet somebody who is lively, is positive, is kind, you pick up on that same energy as well through your intuition. And you can, and I used to think of picking up energy as simply an emotional or mental thing, but I'm learning to get comfortable with understanding or mastering my emotions as are expressed in your body. Your body is what expresses emotion, such as fear or such as panic. Those emotions are expressed physiologically And when you start learning to pay more attention to your body that is always speaking to you, then you can grow your intuition. When you learn to, when you walk into a place, what is your body telling you? And you learn to slow down enough and to quiet yourself enough and listen. What is my body telling me? When you meet a person, what's that reaction in your body? What is it saying? What's the name that you can give to that? You can also develop that ability to use your body to scan the energy of a person or a place. And in that way, be able to discern a space, be able to discern a person and how to interact with them. Number 4 is reflection. Reflection. And reflection is nothing more than taking time to note down the ideas, the hunches, the light bulb moments that come to you. I make it a habit to always have a pen and paper or a pad and paper close by. I have them all over. I have one in my car. I even invested in an electronic one because I hate paper and sometimes I lose paper. The other day, I even went to Amazon and I got wind that there is something as a waterproof pad and pen. In other words, a pen and paper, actually I bought it, it's over here. I'll show it to you maybe one day in another video, that you can use underwater, that you can use in the shower. Why did I invest in that? Because I get a lot of ideas in the shower. It's crazy. I wrote a book, Created for Love. That idea was inspired in the shower. When you study maybe some Eastern philosophies and Zen and all that stuff. Now listen, I'm a Christian, but I've learned that it's wise to open up your mind to other wisdom. Sometimes Christians, we think we own God, and we think that God can only speak to and through us. God used a donkey to speak. He can use anyone. And there is wisdom that can be found. Like you see, the Bible talks about meditation, but it doesn't tell you how. It says to meditate on the word of God day and night. But if you tap into meditation practices of yoga, God has revealed his wisdom on how to meditate through that medium. And if you're open to it, you don't have to accept everything they teach. You don't have to even maybe subscribe to the Buddhists, ideologies, but you can take the good. So long story short, there's a correlation between the flow of idea and water and water. That's why it's calming when you're in a place where water is flowing by a water fountain or next to a stream. Or have you ever sat next to an ocean on the beach and just the ebb and flow of the tide? It calms your spirit. And when your spirit is calm, you open yourself up, if you will. You open your subconscious mind to hear things. I get a lot of ideas. Even of the ideas that I share in my other posts on Facebook, a lot of them, they come in the shower. And sometimes I'm like, what is that idea? Sometimes, because I can't take it down, note it down in the shower, I come out and I'm trying to figure out what was that idea, but it's gone, and so I invested. So long story short, reflection. Note down the ideas that come to you. Do not dismiss them. Write them down. I do that on my phone as well, using the voice recorder. If I get an idea, I hit record and I record the idea. Because I've come to find that divine guidance does not operate on your schedule. Ideas do not come on your schedule and when it's convenient. Sometimes you get an idea at 3 a.m. in the night or the first thing when you wake up in the morning. Now, that's a story for another time. How you can tap into the voice of the divine. And a lot of times when you first wake up, your subconscious mind is wide open. That's a good time to ask God questions. God, what are you saying? How do I do this? And then be still and listen. Somebody said, prayer is us talking to God. Intuition is God talking back to us. And a lot of times we ask God for something, then we leave. We don't give him time to answer. So reflection. Going back through your day, gratitude, being grateful for what happened in reflection, reflecting back on the day and what was effective, what was not. That's divine guidance giving you wisdom as to maybe what you might need to do differently today. So that's number 4. Number 5 It's in the words of a simple song that we used to sing in Sunday school. Trust and obey, for there's no other way to be happy in Jesus than to trust and obey. What do I mean? When you get those hunches, do not ignore them. Intuition simply points the way, it never explains why. Like when you're getting that hunch to not use this highway, you never get an explanation. But if you follow the hunch and say, okay, I'm going to use this other highway, and then later on you find out, oh, there was an accident that I just avoided. In other words, the veracity of intuition is proved in hindsight. And a lot of times when you get an idea, I'm sure when Edison got that idea of inventing the bulb, it sounded crazy and he didn't have all the answers. You just have to trust it by faith and obey. Why is it important to obey? Because the more you learn to listen and respond, in this case, I'm saying obey to that voice, the clearer it becomes. The more God is not in the business of giving you more instructions if you've not obeyed the instructions that He revealed to you last. Why should He? It's a waste of time. But it's also His mercy and grace, because I had somebody once say that God will not reveal to you more than you are obeying because He doesn't want you to have more to be responsible and answerable for. It's also an act of grace. But if you can be trusted with a little, he who is faithful with a little is trusted with a lot. The more you obey those hunches, the stronger they become, and the more it is that you get. And then lastly, another way to just develop the gift of intuition is by practicing solitude. Again, just like stillness, something that's not popular in our culture. Whether you're introverted or extroverted, time alone is very important. And solitude, not just solitude, spending also time alone in nature. Nature, whether you are walking through a beautiful field or with trees or flowers or wind or by a brook, it has a way to awakening your primal instincts and connecting you to the source, God. Because that beauty you see in a sunset, it's not the sunsets, it's God. God can speak to you through a sunset. God can speak to you through a sunrise. God can speak to you as you're walking in the forest. God can speak to you in nature, in a place where you're seeing mountains. God can speak to you as you're watching the birds. God can speak to you as you're hearing the sounds of the animals and the creatures in the morning. Solitude, creating space to hear from the divine. So, my friend, we're out of time. I was going to give you one more, a bonus. Here it is. I'll give it to you real quick. Ask. The Bible says, ask, and it shall be given to you. Knock, and you shall seek, and you shall find. Knock, and the door will be open to you. Like I said, ask God. God, how do I figure this out? How do I solve this problem? How do I start this business? How do I invent this thing? And then do all the things that we talked about above. Practice stillness, breathing, reflection, scanning the energy through your body, trusting and obey, practicing solitude, and listen to His reply. A good time to ask God for something is when you're going to bed. Now, this is a story for another time, but when we are asleep, even though our conscious mind is asleep, our subconscious mind is wide awake and amenable to deposits and downloads. You can go to bed and say, God, just I need your wisdom on this, and say, and then just go to sleep. Then when you wake up, be still, get your pen and paper, and see if anything comes to your heart, if you get a hunch or if you get a mind, if you get directed any kind of way, ask. So that's it, my friend. That's all I have for you today. We're out of time. But thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for tuning in. Let me see if I can just go on the Facebook side, maybe just to see who's watching, who's live. And I know that is that we can experience God. Okay. Just in the well, I'm still figuring out this whole streaming thing. But for those that have joined in, please know that I appreciate you, and I pray that you have found this helpful. So next time we will talk about growing in awareness. Awareness is our superpower, right? We've talked about growing in awareness of God, and today we went a little deeper, growing in awareness of God's voice or leading in our lives through our amazing gift of intuition. Now, next time I want to talk about growing in self-awareness, growing in awareness of your self-concept, seeing yourself and treating yourself and carrying yourself the way God sees you. Not the way the world sees you, not the way you see yourself from that place of poor conditioning, right? Not the negative self-image and concept you have of yourself that was conditioned into you by people that didn't know any better. But how to really see yourself the way God sees you, and as such to carry yourself and show up in life from that vantage point. That's next time, growing in self-awareness, in awareness of your God-like self-concept. I hope you join me. Now, that's the plan, unless, of course, I am led again to do something different. But listen, until then, may the Lord God bless you and keep you. May he cause his face to shine upon you. May he lift up his countenance toward you, be gracious to you, and give you peace. In Jesus' name, amen. Bye. Pesa zimeishia hapo.